petrification might be a problem in Dr. Stone. Actually, the real problem is Dr. Stone itself, the process of petrifying and reviving someone. While it's led to some amazing final battles, petrification poses a major threat to the story. On top of being a pretty clear cheat code for Senku, this Dr. Stone process could mean death no longer has any consequences. And if you're a Dragon Ball fan, then you know exactly why this is a problem. So in this video, I'm going to discuss two major concerns created by petrification and determine whether it really is a problem for the story. Be warned that this video does contain manga spoilers for anime-only fans. Before I get started, make sure to comment with your thoughts on petrification. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week in the next video. This week's comment goes to Joden the Sith for comparing Dai to Goku. If you'd like more Dr. Stone and other manga discussions like this one, then make sure to subscribe and follow along with each week's video. To get started, let's take a look at the first concern, death. Like many shonen manga, Dr. Stone generally avoids killing its characters, except for its protagonist, who basically gets killed but then instantly comes back to life. Normally, this kind of thing would be a red flag. Death in real life has very serious consequences, so when it's treated almost like nothing in a story, it usually makes that story less engaging. But in this case, readers don't see Senku's resurrection as a problem because it seems like a one-time deal. If it hadn't been for Senku's petrified neck, Taiju and Yuzuriha wouldn't have been able to save him. So at this point, we're okay with the whole Dr. Stone process, because it seems like something you can only pull off under very narrow circumstances. Plus, after this point, we're shown that death does have serious consequences. The only reminder of Lillian's music is a single record, Senku can never see his dad again, and the Kingdom of Science goes through tons of changes after the death of Tsukasa. Literally, I mean, the guy goes on about how much he hates capitalism, and then not even 2 seconds after he's gone, they're already printing money. But when we finally get Tsukasa's second revival, it comes with mixed feelings. It's great to see one of our favorite characters come back, but then there's a question of how far they can take this whole Dr. Stone process. In other words, now that they know how to do it, what's stopping the characters from using the Dr. Stone process again and again? And this becomes an even greater concern in South America, where the team has thousands of Medusa devices and knows how to charge them with diamonds. At this point, unlike the time with Senku, the circumstances for the Dr. Stone process seem fairly simple. Make some miracle fluid, take a Medusa from the temple-sized pile, and poof, you can bring back a dead character. Granted, at the time of recording, Chapter 194 still hasn't come out yet, so some of this could change. But as things are right now, there's a reasonable concern that death no longer has serious consequences. But that's just the first concern. There's also the issue of predictability. Admittedly, this one isn't as bad as the other one, but it's something that could just as easily ruin the story. If you have no clue what the hell I'm going on about, just let me explain. In a story with so many roadmaps, you'd think Dr. Stone would get pretty boring. But the story stays fresh by adding tons of twists as the characters work towards their goals. Readers have some idea of where things are headed, but never know exactly how things will play out. And for the most part, this has been true up through the latest chapter. Even something as obvious as the Hyuga twist was still exciting because of the way it was executed. But after the South America arc, this may no longer be the case. In this arc, the Kingdom of Science faced what can only be described as the height of fighting innovation. Soldiers with automatic rifles trained in modern warfare. No pun intended. And despite that, it seems they were able to beat it using the Dr. Stone process. Now, I hope I'm not putting my foot in my mouth when I say this, but with Suika on the job, I think things are pretty safe. But this means that the Kingdom of Science can basically stop anyone they need to using the same process. In other words, future arcs might become repetitive as they follow the same formula of fighting over the Medusas. And this is a trend we're already seeing in the story. Stone Wars was a fight over the Miracle Cave, i.e. petrification. Treasure Island was a fight for the Medusa, also petrification. And South America was a fight for, you guessed it, petrification. Clearly, this issue of predictability is another serious concern. So now that we've seen how both issues could affect Dr. Stone, let's figure out if they're actually a problem. To do that, let's look at a story I mentioned earlier, Dragon Ball. This manga is obviously famous for the Dragon Balls, which allow dead characters to come back to life again and again. To quote the always hilarious Team 4-star, some of them were literally waiting to go back. On top of that, you also have the senzu beans, which are capable of healing all wounds and fully restoring stamina. So in a story with magic balls and magic beans, you'd think death has no consequences. But Dragon Ball manages to balance these things so that they don't undermine the story. The senzu beans are pretty easy because you can only use as many as you grow. If the characters don't budget their beans, which is a completely ridiculous thing to say out loud, but I'ma go ahead and roll with it, then they can't heal themselves until they grow more. In the case of Dragon Balls, those also come with certain rules. Even the Super Dragon Balls, which are capable of granting any wish you can think of, still have a time limit between each wish. Plus, even though they can come back, deaths in Dragon Ball still have consequences because of their emotional impact. For example, when Trunks is killed by Cell, we see how it impacts Vegeta and changes him as a character. Vegeta's character also flips more than someone facing 30 to life in prison, but that's beside the point. Death in Dragon Ball at least feels like it has consequences, because it can only be avoided under certain rules and still has a visible impact on the story. Then on the issue of predictability, the answer is less clear but still pretty simple. While the arcs in Dragon Ball do follow similar patterns, they're never exactly the same. By changing certain details here and there, the arcs manage to stand out from each other. For example, while most villains want immortality, Commander Red just wanted to be taller. And as a fellow small boy, that is such a mood. But even when the villains do have basically the same goals, the story stays fresh by adding in new elements or challenges. Transformations, new characters, and even time travel help each arc feel different from the one before. Just like the issue of death, this doesn't completely solve the problem, but it balances things out so that the Dragon Balls don't make the story repetitive. So, having looked at Dragon Ball, now we can see if these concerns are really a problem yet in Dr. Stone. First, we need to ask, is death only changed under certain circumstances, and does it still have visible impacts on the characters? And it's safe to say the answer right now is a pretty clear yes in both cases. While the team has a virtually unlimited amount of Medusas, they can only do the whole Dr. Stone thing when there's Miracle Fluid, and they can easily run out of Miracle Fluid in the heat of battle when the enemy is literally shooting it out of their hands. Add in other factors like the need for a diamond battery and the ability to actually reach the device with your voice, and bringing characters back doesn't seem so easy. We also need to remember that, at least right now, you can only be revived if your body is still intact. So if you're looking like poor Soyuz's papa, then I'm sorry to say, but you're not coming back anytime soon. And to the other half of this question, death clearly still impacts the characters. We see Kohaku change as a character as she fights alongside Hyuga and Tsukasa, and we see Tsukasa reflect on his philosophy right before he dies. Those are just a fraction of the scenes in this arc where characters are placed under dire circumstances and forced to accept their own deaths. As a result, they either reinforce their desires or experience some kind of personal growth in their final moments. Clearly, death still has grave consequences in the story. Pun very much intended that time. But we still need to ask if Dr. Stone avoids predictability by changing up the usual pattern. Again, the answer to this question seems like a pretty clear yes. Each arc so far has consistently introduced new villains with new challenges that the characters overcome using new inventions and strategies. Stone Wars had Senku stop the OP Tsukasa with a peace treaty, Treasure Island involved stopping the harem-obsessed Ibara using a drone and earpiece, Corn City was a convoluted game of 4D chess, and South America was a brutal war that was just barely decided by a scientific Hail Mary. Even if the story uses the same general pattern, each arc so far has stood out thanks to certain unique elements. So, as we can see, the story is still just fine with the Dr. Stone process. Now, could this change in the future? Of course. There's always the possibility that the next few arcs basically play out the same as South America, and it's just as possible that as the team continues to use the Dr. Stone process, death starts to have less of an impact on the characters. Plus, I'm sure there'll be a bunch of new discoveries about the Medusas that will bring back the same concerns. But based on what we've seen so far, it seems unlikely that this will be the case. As I've said in other videos and on Twitter, Dr. Stone is a story that manages to consistently stick with what works. So considering that it's managed to balance the issues raised in the newest arc, It's reasonable to assume that Dr. Stone will keep things fresh and keep readers engaged with the story, even as it introduces more and more insane science. And that's it for this discussion. If you enjoyed this discussion, then make sure to like the video. If you'd like more Dr. Stone and other manga discussions like this one, then make sure to subscribe and follow along with each week's video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.